My boss demanded I return to the office. So I billed him $5,000 for 1 week. The stack of receipts hit the mahogany veneer of Greg's desk with a heavy, satisfying thud. It wasn't a polite stack. It was a messy, crinkled pile of financial ruin that smelled faintly of expensive steak sauce and airport lounge gin. Greg didn't look up immediately. He was too busy typing something on his mechanical keyboard, probably another email about synergy or culture, ignoring the fact that I was standing in his doorway with a suitcase handle in one hand and a smirk I was struggling to suppress. "Just leave it in the tray, Rain," he muttered, waving a hand dismissively. "I'll sign off on the mileage later." "What is it?" $50 for gas." "Not quite," I said. My voice was calm. Dangerously calm. "You might want to look at the total, Greg. It's a little over the usual petty cash limit." Greg stopped typing. He spun his ergonomic chair around, his eyes narrowing behind his rimless glasses. He looked at the pile. Then he looked at me. Then he reached out and picked up the top receipt. It was for a Delta One first-class ticket. One way. $1,200. His face went through a fascinating spectrum of colors, starting at a confused beige, moving rapidly to a flushed pink, and settling on a deep, vein-popping purple. "What?" He choked, coughing a little. "What the hell is this?" "That's my commute," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "You said, no exceptions." So, I made no exceptions. To understand why Greg looked like he was about to have a coronary event on a Tuesday morning, we have to rewind to last week. I live in Seattle. My company's headquarters is in Manhattan. When I was hired in early 2024, the job posting was in bold, neon letters, "Remote Forever." I have the screenshots. I have the emails. But most importantly, I have the contract. The contract is a beautiful thing. It's 20 pages of legal jargon, but there is one paragraph on page 4, clause 12b, that dictates my entire life. It states, in plain English, that my home base is my residence in King County, Washington. It further states that any and all travel required by the company away from the home base shall be considered business travel and is fully reimbursable, including flights, lodging, and a daily per diem. For a year, this didn't matter. I worked from my home office, overlooking the rain, hitting my KPIs, and making Greg look good. I was the ghost in the machine. Effective, silent, distant. Then came last Tuesday. I was sipping coffee at 8 a.m., getting ready to log in, when the notification chimed. An email from the CEO. Subject, "Building our future together." Corporate speak for, "We screwed up." I opened it. Team, effective January 14th, we are ending our remote work pilot program. Collaboration happens in the room, not on Zoom. All employees are required to be at their assigned desks by 9 a.m. this coming Wednesday. Failure to report will be considered voluntary resignation. No exceptions. I froze. My coffee went cold in my hand. Voluntary resignation. It was a soft layoff. That's what this was. They wanted to trim the headcount without paying severance, so they were forcing a frantic RTO policy to make people quit. I picked up the phone and called Greg immediately. "Greg, it's me," I said. "I just saw the email." "Yeah, big changes," Greg said. He sounded chipper. Too chipper. Excited to see everyone's faces again. "Greg, I live 1,000 miles away. I live in Seattle." "I know," he said. The warmth vanished from his voice, replaced by the icy tone of middle management compliance. "But the email says no exceptions. If you aren't here on the 14th, we have to process your exit." Hands are tied. My blood ran hot. I could feel the pulse thumping against my collar. "You want me to move to New York? In a week? On my own dime?" "If you want the job, you need to be in the office," Greg said. "Look, take the weekend to think about it. If you don't show, we'll mail you the final paperwork." He hung up. Just like that. I sat there, staring at my dual monitors. The rage wasn't a sudden explosion, it was a slow, creeping rot. I looked around my house, the house I bought because I had a remote job. I looked at my dog sleeping on the rug. They expected me to just fold. They expected me to send a resignation letter by Friday so they could save a few bucks on unemployment insurance. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out my employment contract. I read Clause 12B. I read it again. Then I read the CEO's email. All employees are required to be at their assigned desks. Required. That was the key word. I wasn't choosing to go to the office. I was being required to go. And since my home base was Seattle, that meant I was traveling for business. I didn't quit. I opened Expedia. I started with the flight. Usually, when I travel for personal reasons, I'm a main cabin, middle seat, pray for death kind of guy. I look for the cheapest layover. But this wasn't personal travel. This was business. And according to the company travel policy, which I pulled up on the internet, flights over 6 hours qualify for business class or higher to ensure employee readiness upon arrival. Seattle to JFK is about 5.5 hours in the air, but with taxiing, it pushes 6. I didn't risk it. I booked the Delta One suite. Lie-flat seats. Privacy door. The works. The price tag was $1,280 for a one-way ticket. I didn't even blink. I put it on my personal Amex to get the points. Reimbursement would be sweet. Next, lodging. The office is in Midtown Manhattan. Expensive real estate. The travel policy states that employees must stay at a safe and reputable hotel within a reasonable distance of the work site. You know what's safe, reputable, and very close to the office? The Ritz-Carlton. I checked the rates. $450 a night plus tax. A standard room, but standard at the Ritz is better than my master bedroom at home. I booked it for 5 nights. Monday to Friday. Then, the per diem. New York City has a high cost of living adjustment in our handbook. The daily meal allowance for executive travel, and since I was traveling to HQ, I counted myself as an executive traveler, was $100 a day. I sat back in my chair at 11 a.m. on a Thursday, staring at a tentative itinerary that cost more than my first car. My heart was hammering, but not from fear anymore. It was adrenaline. Malicious, focused adrenaline. I emailed Greg back. "Greg, I've reviewed the policy. I will be there Tuesday morning as requested. Looking forward to the collaboration." I didn't mention the move. I didn't mention an apartment hunt. I just said I'd be there. Tuesday morning came. I woke up at 4 a.m. Seattle time. I didn't pack boxes. I didn't call movers. I packed a single carry-on suitcase with 5 suits and my laptop. The flight was magnificent. I drank a mimosa before takeoff. I stretched my legs out fully. I watched a movie while eating a hot meal served on actual china. I thought about Greg sitting in his cubicle, probably timing people's bathroom breaks, while I was cruising at 30,000 feet sipping champagne. I landed at JFK at 4 p.m. I took a black car into the city. That's another $120. Uber black, obviously. Safety first. Check-in at the Ritz was seamless. The concierge greeted me by name. The room had a view of Central Park. I put on the robe, the heavy, plush kind that feels like a hug from a polar bear, and ordered room service. A burger and fries, costing $45. I signed the bill with a flourish. Wednesday morning. The deadline. I showed up at the office at 8:45 a.m. sharp. I was wearing my best suit. I looked rested, hydrated, and expensive. The office was a dreary, gray wasteland. You could feel the misery in the air. People were slumped in their cubicles, aggressively typing, trying to look busy. The collaboration the CEO bragged about looked a lot like collective depression. I walked straight to Greg's office. "Greg!" I boomed, stepping inside. "Good morning." Greg looked up, startled. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked. "Rain. You made it." He sounded disappointed. He was expecting to fire me. He was expecting to report the headcount reduction to his superiors. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, shaking his limp hand. "Ready to collaborate?" "Right," Greg said, recovering. "Well, your desk is over by the printer. We don't have a permanent spot for you yet since, well, we didn't think you'd come. But you can hot desk there." "Perfect," I said. I sat down at a wobbly desk next to a printer that sounded like a dying lawnmower. I opened my laptop. I logged into Teams. I realized that the 3 people I actually work with are based in London and Austin. So, I put on my noise-canceling headphones and proceeded to have a Zoom meeting. In the office. Just like I did at home, but with worse lighting and uncomfortable pants. At 12 p.m., I stood up. Lunch time. I went to a steakhouse around the corner. I sat at the bar. I ordered a ribeye and a sparkling water. The bill was $85. I tipped well. I kept the receipt. The rest of the week was a blur of malicious compliance luxury. Thursday night, I took a client out. Well, he's an old friend who works in the industry, but we talked about business for 5 minutes, so it counts. We went to a sushi place that flies its fish in from Tokyo daily. I expensed the whole thing. Every night, I went back to the Ritz. I slept in high thread count sheets. I used the spa products. I lived like a king. And every time I swiped my card, I thought of Greg's smug face when he told me, "No exceptions." By Friday morning, I had amassed a collection of paper that represented a small fortune. Which brings us back to the moment the receipts hit the desk. "That's my commute," I repeated, watching Greg's soul leave his body. Greg picked up the hotel folio. His eyes bulged. "The Ritz? You stayed at the Ritz?" "Safe and reputable," I reminded him. "Policy manual, page 18. For a week." Greg spluttered. "You don't live here. You didn't move." "Move?" I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "Greg, you gave me 5 days' notice. I have a mortgage. I have a wife. I have a dog. I can't move in 5 days. You said I had to be at my desk. I am at my desk. To get to this desk from my home base, I have to travel. This is the cost of that travel." "We are not paying this," Greg said, slamming the paper down. "This is insane. You spent $5,000 in 4 days. Actually, the return flight is this afternoon, so it'll be closer to 6,000 by the time I land," I corrected him. "And you are paying it. Because if you don't, you're in breach of contract." "I'm calling HR, Greg hissed, reaching for his phone. "Please do," I said. "Ask for Sarah. She drafted my contract." I sat in the chair opposite him while he made the call. I watched him explain, in frantic, hushed tones, that an employee was trying to bankrupt the department. I watched him pause, listen, and then pale. "What do you mean, check the clause?" Greg asked into the phone. Silence. "But he lives in Seattle." More silence. "Well, can we fire him for not moving?" I leaned forward. This was the best part. Greg listened for a long time. Then he hung up the phone. He didn't slam it. He placed it down gently, like it was made of glass. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and defeat. HR says the contract is valid. I know, I said. They say that because we mandated the return with less than 30 days notice, we can't force relocation without a comprehensive package, which we aren't offering right now because of the budget cuts. Sounds like a you problem, Greg. They say. Greg swallowed hard. They say we have to reimburse reasonable business travel expenses. And the Delta One suite? I asked innocently. Over 6 hours, right? Employee readiness? Greg looked like he wanted to cry. They're approving it. This time. Great, I said, standing up and smoothing my suit jacket. I'll see you next week then. I'm thinking of trying the Four Seasons. I hear their room service is faster. Next week? Greg whispered. Well, yeah, I said. I work here. I have to be at my desk. No exceptions, right? So I'll fly home tonight for the weekend, see the wife, wash some clothes, and fly back Monday morning. Unless. I let the word hang there. Unless what? Greg asked. He looked desperate. The department budget for travel was probably $10,000 for the whole quarter. I was going to burn through that in 2 weeks. Unless you want to designate me as a remote employee again, I said. Then I won't have to travel. I can just stay at my home base. No flights. No Ritz. No steak dinners. Greg stared at the receipts. He stared at me. He did the mental math. $6,000 a week. $24,000 a month. Nearly $300,000 a year in travel expenses for a mid-level manager. Or, he could just let me stay home. Get out, Greg said. Is that a get out, you're fired, or a get out and go back to Seattle? Go back to Seattle, Greg groaned, rubbing his temples. Work from home. Just, take the receipts. I can't put this through. If the CFO sees a bill for the Ritz, he'll execute me. I already submitted the digital copy to Concur, I said, smiling. It's already in the system, Greg. You have to approve it. Or deny it and explain to legal why you're breaching my contract. Greg looked at his screen. The notification was there. Expense report, January 14th to 17th. Total, $5,842.12. I'll approve it, he whispered. Just go. And don't come back on Monday. Can I get that in writing? I asked. Just so we're clear. Exception granted. He typed the email right there, while I watched. He forwarded it to me and HR. Rain is approved for full-time remote status effective immediately. No further travel to HQ required. Pleasure doing business with you, Greg, I said. I picked up my suitcase. I didn't walk out of the building. I took the elevator down, hailed a cab, and went straight to JFK. My flight wasn't until 6 p.m., but I figured I'd spend a few hours in the lounge. I had some points to rack up, and the champagne wasn't going to drink itself. I landed in Seattle at 9 p.m. local time. My wife was waiting up. How was the office, she asked. Expensive, I said, kissing her. But I don't think I'll be going back. The reimbursement hit my account 3 days later. Every single cent. The best part? Since I put it all on my personal card, I kept the credit card points. I earned enough miles in 1 week to pay for our summer vacation. I'm back in my home office now. The rain is hitting the window. The dog is snoring on the rug. Greg hasn't sent me a single email since I left, other than the automated invites for the weekly stand-up. When I logged into the meeting this morning, Greg looked tired. He was sitting in the gray office, under the fluorescent lights. I was sitting in my ergonomic chair with a fresh espresso. Good to see everyone, Greg said, his voice flat. Great to be here, Greg, I chirped. He didn't make eye contact with my camera feed. It turns out, return to office mandates are really just a game of chicken. They bet that you're too scared of losing your paycheck to call their bluff. They bet that you'll uproot your life to sit in a fabric-covered box for 8 hours a day. But they forgot the first rule of gambling: never bet more than you can afford to lose. And definitely never bet against a man who reads the fine print. So, am I the monster for bleeding the company dry for $5,000 in 1 week, or did they get exactly what they deserved for trying to force me out?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.